Hello everyone, Meespeed here with another video. So, it's a new year, and nearly a decade after it was shut down, Battlefield Heroes is still playable to this day, but is it still worth playing? In this video, I'll go over the positives and negatives, as well as opinions and experiences of mine and others as well, with the game, and I'll hopefully be able to answer that question. So to begin with, as I said, BFH was shut down nearly a decade ago. The original game closed in July 2015, and we never thought it would return. 2 years after the closure, the game was miraculously brought back through the Revive project. We had Revive Heroes, Heroes Awaken, and many other BFH projects that came and went, and Rising Hub is the current project and the main source to play the game, and has been since late 2017. And I'll make sure to link their website and the info you need in the description and the comments as well. So now the backstory's out of the way, I want to first mention one of the biggest positives to playing the game nowadays, which is that the game is truly free to play. Obviously you guys know that was one of the biggest draws with the original game, but they didn't really stick to that for different reasons. But now there's no paying to win concept anymore, which, like I say, that was something they didn't stick to. It was, the free to play thing was kind of went out the window, and it was easily the most hated part of the original game, that people were just, paying to win basically, and it was a pay to win game. You can't spend money to get ahead anymore. Weapons and clothing, everything else in the store is unlocked through VP, the currency you get from simply playing the game, leveling up, completing missions. It's worth knowing the game's missing some features from the original though, but to be honest, depending on how you look at those features, this is probably more good than bad. We don't have the workbench, certain weapons from 2013, alternate fire modes, team elimination, capture the flag, the prestige rank bar, certain like HUD elements such as player levels and health, the treasure chest drops, and the free cam. So let's address these one by one. The workbench was one of the most hated aspects of the game, which allowed you to buy different mods for your weapons that increased the damage, ammo count, ranges on weapons, critical hits, much more, like loads of stuff basically, which was pretty unbalanced. The game was made worse off because of it, and kind of very broken, I think, and I can't imagine many people miss it at all really. Most of the missing weapons were known as some of the more annoying and overpowered ones when they started to introduce new mechanics, such as the debuff gun, which slowed down enemies and made them take extra damage, and the beehive, which made an enemy basically run around in a panic, unable to shoot back for a few seconds. Once again, I think the game's in a healthier place overall without some of these weapons, even though a few of them were pretty harmless, and I do personally miss the healing syringe, which was one of the best team play weapons for the soldier, and a lot of fun to use as well. Alternate fire modes were a mixed bag, I think. Some of them had a big impact and changed the weapon drastically, whereas others were barely noticeable and a waste of time and you didn't really use them. But overall, I think they were disliked, and again, I don't see this being a problem, and a lot of weapons are very usable nowadays without those extras anyway. Team elimination was a cool concept for a game mode, and I liked the early stages in the public testing, but when it got released it was mostly just abused by stat padders to get easy points and to climb the leaderboards. So again, I don't think the mode left a great impression on most people, and it wasn't widely liked and was pretty much ignored a lot back in the day as well. CTF was actually really fun and I liked it, but from what I remember, most people wanted a longer round and didn't capture the flags quickly or at all, and free early captures were heavily discouraged, so people didn't really want others to play the objective. But yeah, nowadays server admins can add tickets to the team deathmatch mode anyway, to make the games longer. But I do still miss the mode, I'm not going to lie, and it did have unique spawns and you played on some maps differently as a result. The prestige rank bar was pretty useful if you did care for ranks. Back then I did like it and use it. Nowadays though, if you go to your hero page on the website, you can actually see the percentage you are towards the next rank anyway, which is better than nothing, I guess. Seeing player health as a soldier was actually pretty useful, I think, so it's a shame we don't have that, as it did improve team play back then, and I just thought it was a good quality of life thing. And for player levels, it's mostly redundant now, since you can basically see server info on the website, such as players and levels and stuff like that. So all that information, you don't really need it in the game, I guess. The treasure chests were also interesting, and I guess another thing to aim for, but there isn't really a need for them now, because all the treasure chest exclusives like the horse heads and stuff like that are in the store now anyway, and they have been for years, so I think it's only a minor thing. Free cam was again a fun mode to use in unranked servers, mostly to get video clips or to make your own trailers and stuff, so I do kind of miss that, as I spent a lot of time messing around on those servers back in the day. But I think most people these days wouldn't find a use for it, and unranked servers are rarely used now, especially for that purpose. Overall though, you could maybe say that more of the worse elements from BFH's final years aren't really around now. So trends from the original are kept running. For example, seasonal stuff. The Halloween items are released in October. The country face paints return for the likes of the Euro and the World Cup. And we recently saw the Christmas sets as well. The War Room is also run consistently with new seasons. There's also custom content like new maps, clothing, weapons, weapon skins, and even crosshairs made by the community, which allows them to get involved, which is nice. Custom shirts for BHL tournament winners, and other events as well with rewards, and I believe there are still plans to continue with new custom content in the future, even if it's at a slow pace. And on the topic of tournaments, I believe there's a chance the Nations Cup will make a comeback as well, which was quite popular back in the day. It's obviously quite easy to run the game, you don't need a powerful PC as BFH is so old, but I will say it's difficult on Linux, and I still haven't seen evidence of someone playing on a Mac, and I don't think it's a simple process either. So the game is of course still only available on PC. I do know some people nowadays that just have consoles, so obviously they wouldn't be able to play. Some items that were never released in the old game are available, which is interesting, such as clothing, the broomstick emotes, golden lasers for example, stuff like that. And it's also possible to use different and new setups that you couldn't in the past. One example being the dual Uzis, because a stolen version was created a few years ago, and back in the day you could only use one of them. There are daily incentives to play, such as the daily claw giving VP items and boosts, the daily mission which could take a few rounds to complete depending on the task, and also progression in the war room and the rewards from that. There's replay value in leveling heroes on your account for a total of 6, ranking up, the leaderboards, as well as earning VP to unlock different weapons and items. So on to some negatives. As you can imagine, the player count isn't massive, and as a result of that, some communities are a lot smaller than before. There's a small Brazilian community, an even smaller Australian community that arranges games in a Discord server, and an almost non-existent US community. To my knowledge, anyone from there just plays on EU servers, but that has its advantages, to be honest. People have had issues with the download process as well, and also using Discord and linking their account. And it is slightly more complicated than the download for the old game, but I don't think it's too awful either. Others have experienced error messages and specific instances of the game not working too well for them. I know the Discord has an FAQ and a help section though, which can usually provide an answer for people, and obviously something's been done in the past to sort of solve something. The game can crash sometimes as well when loading in certain maps in the store, but that's normally if you've been on the game for quite a while. Unbalanced rounds can be an issue. Most of the time the Nationals have more players or higher levels in general, but that's because most newer players seem to start with the Royals, which happened in the old game too. There's a team switch option available though, which does help to solve balance issues, which obviously wasn't in the old game, and it can have an impact, but it isn't always used or encouraged, sadly. People have complained about slow leveling and the game being a grind and not new player friendly, which I can't argue too much with. There's a weekly VP lottery in Discord and other codes to help out new players, but I still think more could be done, like bonus XP on weekends and not just the occasional event. This doesn't apply to everyone obviously, but it's worth knowing that people have improved at the game over the years, not just because of how old the game is, but also because technology has improved. We have access to better PCs, gaming mice and equipment now compared to the old days, which could discourage some new or returning players. Cheaters do exist, but it's literally only a handful of people that normally get dealt with pretty quickly after a report on Discord, which isn't bad compared to the reports on the forums back in the day that didn't get reviewed for weeks, months or at all. And I know it's not ideal, but I think with a lot of these multiplayer games, like, you are going to get cheaters no matter what. Hit regs can be an issue and inconsistent for some people. Some players have also noticed like other people having an advantage and straight up better regs than others, depending on ping and other factors, which can be pretty noticeable and unfair at times. But I get that lag compensation comes into it with a smaller player base especially. I know a new server is being tested to try and get rid of some of those issues, which would help quite a lot, honestly. There are obviously parts of the game now that are outdated and feel slow to people. For example, like not being able to change your class or load out in a server, you know, having to exit and rejoin once you've changed what you need to, and obviously as a result of that you could sometimes lose your place in the server. I mentioned custom stuff early on, and while that can be a positive thing, people have disliked some of it as well, notably the map kawaii kick and how unbalanced it is, which I actually made a video on, you know, in 2023 I believe, but I'm not seeing the map as much nowadays, which is good. I know some people mention not liking changes to some weapons. Personally, I think some of them aren't massive changes or that noticeable, and others, like the laser machine gun not working with frenzy fire anymore, are actually well received changes because people hated the weapon for that reason back in the day. Some of the staff have been criticised in the past, and I think most of them can admit their mistakes and, you know that like things weren't always handled in the past in the best way. But I do think a few things will always be controversial to some people, as it's not an official reboot of the game and there isn't a company like EA overseeing things, just the community. But you could argue, you know, a big organisation in control has its own drawbacks too. I do know the staff are also long-time fans of the game and they appreciate the support the project receives as well as any donations. Some of the servers have rules and limits. Most servers have commando limits and won't allow certain weapons. I do agree with some rules, but others don't make much sense and they just like limit options for no good reason basically. But it's ultimately up to the server renters, and I know there's a couple of populated servers that have no commando limits. The only problem is then you mostly have commandos on those servers, which means it's not really enjoyable if you're playing a different class because you won't really see your teammates and the enemy will be hard to find as well. The servers can still be diverse to suit different interests though, for example infantry only servers, vehicle map focused servers, or a mix of both. The more specific you get, obviously, the less likely you'll get into a server. For example, trying to use the Dragon Fire, which is banned almost everywhere. And I know the original game had servers with similar rules too, but I do think the server issue is more noticeable these days because of the current player count, which I'll get into next. So there are 4 to 6 full servers most nights, EU time, so about 60 to 100 players, and less during the day understandably, and there are over 500 different players over the course of a week, which isn't huge, but I mean the game does have a very passionate and loyal small community, and the bottom line is everyone is brought together for the love of BFH, and you can still come across people to this day that you might recognise from years ago, which is a cool feeling, and Rising Hub has actually been around longer than the original game now, which is impressive. So I've given some positives and negatives. Ultimately guys, it's your own choice, but to answer the question and the video title, I'd say yes, I think the game's worth trying out to this day and brings back some memories and nostalgic feelings if you can look past any of the issues I've mentioned. I think the game's still fun and unique and holds up today, but it might not be a main game for you. It might be like, you know, possibly something you occasionally play here and there on weekends or a few times a month, or to be honest, just whenever you want that BFH charm again. Personally, I've been playing since 2010 and the game is still a great nostalgia fix for me and I do enjoy it. So yeah, this has been a bit of a longer video I guess than I expected. I'll probably have to add some timestamps or something, but yeah, hope you liked it, and yeah, thanks for watching, and I'm hoping to make more BFH videos this year, so see you next time.